One of the most important dynamics of any A-League season is the A-League fixtures. Given some of the uniqueness of the A-League competition, the match schedule does have an impact on how teams prepare or the quality of team they can put on the park in any given week. We think football has matured enough now that we can move toward an uncompromised A-League season. Two of the key dynamics that do compromise the season are playing through international match breaks or the FIFA designated match days. And we also don't have enough flexibility in the draw to accommodate teams who are playing in the Asian Champions League. The illusion that football somehow has clean air during Australian sporting calendar, I think, is now something of a myth. We've seen the AFL look to expand their season with the women's competition. We've seen the Big Bash heavily promoted during the end and early months of the year. We're seeing a lot of sports now trying to expand what would normally have been their season. I think we've reached the point now where we stop accommodating what other sports are doing and contort around what they're doing at any given time and actually start focusing in on building a calendar that's in the best interests of the teams, the clubs, the players, and importantly the fans. As outlined, the FIFA International Match Calendar is probably the single biggest challenge that we face. The PFA's position very much is that we need to ensure there's no longer a conflict between the international matches the players are involved with and the scheduling of A-League games. In doing this, we're really guided by three key principles. The first of those is being able to have an uncompromised recruitment policy. So in the past, we've seen some high quality international players come in, such as a Mark Yanko, and their ongoing capacity to remain in the A-League has been compromised by international duties. The second is competition integrity. We need to ensure that there's not a huge difference between the oppositions that teams are likely to play from one week to the next. It's one of our fundamental obligations to our fellow teams, to the players, to the fellow professionals, that each team fields the best possible team each week. The data is quite simple. We've seen a very large volume of matches being missed by international footballers, over 50 games 2 seasons ago, and we anticipate close to 40 games being impacted on by international absences this season. And the reality is that it's only the very best players who will be targeted for these absences. That's the nature of international football. So players like Aaron Moy, Matt Mackay, Josh Risdon, who are all exceptional Australian footballers that fans do go and see and add to their team significantly, they're the players who are missing. And equally, there's international players like Mark Yanko who added a significant amount to the competition, who A, miss out on games week to week, but then don't actually remain in the competition because of this conflict. And we also know it's not just localised to Wellington Phoenix. We've seen Melbourne City, Brisbane Roar, Perth Glory, Melbourne Victory all impacted to varying degrees due to the absence of their core players. Ultimately, we don't see this problem going away. The reality is more and more A-League based players will be playing for the Socceroos as the A-League matures and as we take a more domestic focus to building our national teams. Even through one World Cup cycle, we've seen a doubling of domestic players or A-League based players featuring in major global tournaments like the World Cup and the Asian Cup. The second component of this policy is particularly relevant right now, and that's the scheduling of matches within the A-League. As we know, the very best teams qualify for the Asian Champions League. They do so on the basis of having achieved during the A-League season. The current FFA policy is grounded or guided by the 72-hour rule, which in essence says that teams shouldn't play 72 hours between kickoffs. One of the concerns the PFA has with the 72-hour rule is that it fails to properly incorporate the long-haul travel that's inherent within the Asian Champions League. When matches are accompanied by long-haul travel, it really does undermine some of the core objectives of the A-League, being competitive fairness, player wellbeing and safety, and absolute competitiveness on an international stage. As a consequence of that, it's very important for us that we have a minimum of 72 hours between matches. But when long-haul travel is involved, there needs to be an analysis of this travel and more than 72 hours applied, and potentially up to 96 hours where teams have undertaken really significant travel. It's only by doing this that we can afford players appropriate recovery between matches that will enable them to perform to the level they need to, but also ensure they're not overtly susceptible to injury. In our analysis, the match scheduling has created a large number of unacceptable risks in recent seasons. Most recently, had Melbourne Victory been successful in the elimination final last season, they would have played 2 matches within 72 hours, which incorporated 10 hours of air travel. Moreover, the volume of travel that our teams undertake in any given season is extreme. The 3 teams that have qualified for Asia this season will do almost 40,000 kilometres of travel during the regular season. That's without incorporating what their Asian Champions League requirements will be. In very simple terms, a standard recovery period normally constitutes 72 hours. That enables a player to return to baseline in all of the core activities they undertake during a game. The reality is that long-haul travel aggravates this significantly. Symptoms such as jet lag, sleep disruption, whilst these symptoms are still in place, it's very likely that an athlete's performance will still be suboptimal. As a consequence, it's critical that we increase the recovery time to over 72 hours and closer to 96. One of the complexities of long-haul travel is that it disrupts sleep and causes jet lag. This significantly impacts on a player's capacity to return to their optimal performance levels. In formulating policy around an A-League match schedule, it's really important that we recognise the unique characteristics of the A-League. We don't have the capacity to charter jets. We return to very hot weather, and the travel that we undertake is significantly longer than most teams around the world are used to.